What's going on, everybody? Strategic Operative here. Today I want to be bringing you a video about Star Wars Armada and an element of the game that I feel is missing, especially in this time in development in Star Wars Armada. I'm explicitly talking about ship-to-squadron combat. Now, in Armada we have ship-to-ship combat. We have very little ship-to-squadron combat through flakking. That's a very small part of the game. Even ships that are designed for anti-squadron, like Raider, the Impetuous title, and the Instigator, really are, number one, supposed to be ship-to-ship combat. They do their roles okay, but there's so much more they can be doing. And you have your squadrons. You have squadron combat, like your A-wing. Then you have your squadron to ship combat, which is like your bombers, your B-wing. So what I'm talking about is a ship that is, whether it's a frigate-sized class, small-sized class ship, that is only intended to attack squadrons. It cannot attack ships at all. It only can attack squadrons. Not through the flakking mechanism, though, that is already created in the game, but a new mechanism that I guess can take some elements of flakking, but your hull zones have different dice armaments. Whether it's your side arcs have 3 blue dice, your back has a black and a blue, and your front has 2 black. But different armaments, it's not an all flakking around system, you have the same dice. I would also like to see upgrades where you could upgrade this armament. Granted, it would probably be really expensive. I don't mind it being like 20 points to get a red dice on your front, or your left and right hull zones, or your back, almost like spinal armament. That's okay. But the reason why I'm bringing this idea up is because I've been talking to some people within the community about this idea, as I'm a Tarkin Doctrine player in Star Wars Armada. Now that's a little different than it is in the actual Star Wars universe, and I think I'll do a video on that probably later explaining how that works in Star Wars Armada, because it's a little different. Because each side, whether it's Rebel, Empire, they all start with 400-point fleet. You could build up to that point. Then you have, your ships of each size and class, and they're roughly about the same. They're pretty equal. I mean, yes, an SSD is probably a little bit better than some of the Rebel ships, but overall, if you upgrade them right and build the platform okay, it's fair still. Squadrons, I think that Rebels have a huge high advantage over the Empire, even though some Empire ones are really good and strong. But when you compare these two up together, there's not one faction that's towering over the other, like in the Star Wars universe with the Tarkin Doctrine. So within the game, it's a little different mechanics. It's pretty much more of concentrating fire, getting your biggest ship, pretty much crushing your fleet into a single or a few ships as possible that has the most fire output, and you're focusing on destroying the other capital ship, or your enemy's capital ship, or your opponent's capital ship, or taking out their carriers if they're running a bomber list or a squadron list or squadron ball. That's the idea behind it. It's not necessarily engaging with squadrons. And one of the things that's hard with somebody who plays by this style is now you have to upgrade all your ships with Counter 1, you have to put Callus, you have to figure out how to put Raiders in there, to put the Impetuous title. You have to build your list to sort of counter squadrons, even though you're not using squadrons. And that sort of contradicts what you're doing in the first place using the Tarkin Doctrine. And that's why I want to see a ship out there that FFG puts out that is a small size ship that is just intended to attack squadrons. It cannot attack ships. Its armament is only valid against squadrons, not ships. That would be a really cool aspect, because now you want to protect this little guy. Fly him next to an SSD. The SSD is covering great fire. Everything's going to be focusing its fire on the SSD, but you're keeping that frigate close enough to where if a squadrons get in the way, it's going to try taking care of that before the SSD has to focus a turn or fire to demolish a squadron. That would be a really cool aspect. Or if you're running Simoon or almost any list for an Imperial player, it would be awesome to put one of these ships in it, because I could see it running for like 40 points. And if you beefed it up to, 60 points, you're putting Agent Callus on there. You could put Tua on there. One of those two would still be great. You could also put quad laser turrets, which is an excellent for any ship that is going up against squads. You could put point defense. I think it's point defense cannons, or I forget the exact word for it, but pretty much if a squadron attacks you at close range, you get to reroll your crit. Those would be really good options. I would love to see on the ship. Plus, I would like to see its own unique upgrade slot to where you could add armament for your flakking. The reason why I still call it flakking is because I'm not sure if it's too weak since we're using arcs and we're using dice within these arcs. If you had to choose, so if you had, we'll say you had two TIE fighters in your front arc, I don't know if you would be able to flak both of those with that armament in the front, or if you would have to choose one of those for your attack and roll. I feel like if that was the case, if the second one is where you had to choose the squadron and attack, the dice should be a little bit more powerful. There should be a little bit more dice, but at the same time, you could still incorporate the flakking mechanism out of an actual hull zone, where the flakking is not the dice is not representing all hull zones. Each hull zone has its own flakking capability. That's what I would really like to see in Star Wars Armada. I don't know how close we are to getting it, or if we're going to get it at all. I thought we were going to get it by now, because I recognized this problem when Wave 2 came out. However, at the same time, a lot of us wanted the Super Star Destroyer to come out. That has yet to come out, but I would really like to see a mechanism where it's just ship to squadron combat. That's a key play, and I don't think we're going to see that quite yet. The reason being is because FFG released that 2 sizable class ships are coming out before Clone Wars. I'm going to assume that one of those is going to be a rebel ship of larger size, and the other one is probably going to be a dual faction ship. Let me know what you think about that, but I really think it's going to be a dual faction dreadnought or something like that, where both sides can take advantage of. Maybe it's a carrier, but that's my idea right now. But I don't think you would use the word large, huge, or any words that they've been using to try to amp up that this is a really big thing that they're putting out if it's a frigate. I don't think that's the case, or even if they're doing like the Hammerheads where you come with 2 of them. I still don't think that's going to happen. I could see this happening after Clone Wars comes out, and when they're still, hopefully, they'll be doing ships still for the Rebel and Empire, and maybe then we'll get our ship. I don't know how, that's probably another year and a half into the future, at least. So I'm definitely having my fingers crossed and hoping that this does come out. But you all let me know what you think on this topic. Do you think that it's fair to want a ship like this of a frigate-sized class that is just intended to attack squadrons, cannot attack ships? How effective do you think that would be against the meta right now in your area? And would you use something like this? If it was for the Rebel or Empire, would you consider using this in your fleet? And is there any other ship or any other idea that you think Armada is lacking in right now, or that you would really like to see out of Armada right now? Let me know.